and stuff. But they can only choose 30 each year. Think of that. Think of that. So Paul Soros arrived in New York with very little money, okay? And he enrolled in Brooklyn College and Polytechnic Institute, a present-day New York University Tandem School of Engineering, where he earned his master's degree. As he could not afford higher education Ivy League universities, he resided in a cheap apartment near Prospect Park as a student, but still struggled to pay for rent and food. He founded the Soros Association, which designs and develops bulk handling and port facilities. A Brazilian multinational used designs created by Soros' company to quadruple Brazil's iron ore output, becoming the world's largest corporate iron ore producer. Soros Associates now operates in 91 countries around the world. So a super successful country. You've got a guy who came in as an immigrant in 1936. He changed his name. I'm going to go through the timeline here a little bit. So in 1936, and I wrote this down because I don't want to get it wrong, but here's kind of Paul Soros's timeline of what his life was. In 1936, his family, Schwartz, they changed their name to Soros because what was happening in 1936? Well, the Nazis were taking over Europe, okay? They're Hungarian Jews with the last name of Schwartz. So they changed their name to Soros. In 1944, Germany occupied Hungary. Okay, so this was getting toward the end of the war. In 1945, the Soviets liberated Hungary, and they arrested Paul Soros, mistakenly thinking that he was an SS officer. On the march to Russia, Paul Soros was able to escape the prisoner march, and he worked his way back to Budapest, where he lived in hiding and traveled in safe houses for a long time during the Soviet occupation before it was released. And in 1948, he immigrated to America. And then you have the story. He went to school. He became successful. He started in 1950. He went to that college where he met his wife, Daisy. He founded Soros Associates after he graduated, became incredibly wealthy because he created a way whereas a company in Brazil could become the largest iron ore producer and distributor in the world. He built that corporation until it now operates in 91 countries around the world. Okay? In 1998, he founded the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans in 1998. And then the rest is kind of history. We've talked about it. Let's take a look at his philanthropy through his foundation just a little bit closer. Paul Soros and his wife Daisy Soros founded the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans, which provides funding for graduate degrees for immigrants and the children of immigrants. Each year, 30 are awarded fellowships for up to $90,000 to cover 2 years of graduate tuition, as well as living and other expenses. The fellows may study any subject they wish at any American university. Now, check this out, because these are the qualifications that Vivek had to meet to get his $90,000. And keep in mind, out of 1,800 applicants, only 30 are chosen. And Vivek Ramaswamy happened to be one in 2011. So the fellowship, in order to be awarded the fellowship, students must demonstrate a unique idea or talent, have accomplished something concrete through long-term effort, and have been involved with the government or other organization dedicated to the ideals of the U.S. Bill of Rights. This guy's a patriot. Paul Soros exemplifies the American dream. He's a constitutional conservative, a patriot who believes in the Bill of Rights, and as a requirement of those who would get grants from his foundation, he's a philanthropist, and not in the way that Bill Gates is, but in a real meaningful way that I think makes a difference. Paul and Daisy Soros founded the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship in 1998 with $50 million. By 2010, they had awarded more than $30 million to nearly 400 students. They dedicated an additional $25 million to the fellowship in 2010. Paul Soros served as chairman of the fellowship, and his son, Jeffrey Soros, became the president in 2010. Paul Soros died in 2013, survived by his wife, Daisy, and Jeffrey still runs the fellowship that's doing so much good for the education of immigrants that come to this country. So is there a Soros connection to Vivek Ramaswamy? Yes. Could anybody find that out if they just did their homework and dug a little bit pretty easily? Yes. Don't be lazy. Don't just assume you have all the answers because you hear, oh, Vivek takes Soros money. Don't let the Trump blinders blind you so much to the fact that there are other viable people out there. And Vivek may be one. Maybe he's not. But he deserves a look. And he deserves an honest digging into who he is and what his past is. Don't believe the BS. Remember, a lot of what you hear on mainstream media, even from the conservative pundits, is fake news. I hear Trump supporters, they're the ones who told me that. No, Vivek Ramaswamy he has Soros money. I won't even look at him. Well, you're making a mistake, you're being ignorant, and you're doing it by your own choice. So don't be willfully ignorant. Do your homework. Or, just tune into me every day. I'll do a lot of it for you. Maybe I can be part of your homework. How about that? That's kind of what I do. I gather information. I present it to you. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not trying to make up your mind or have you go in a different direction. I'm simply providing real life information, giving my opinion on it. It's an opinion show. And then you can make up your own mind and form your own opinions. That's what free thinking beings do. That's what a free society does. That's what America does. So a couple more things on Vivek, and then we'll move on to a few other topics before we take off here for the weekend. I got to get my thing to go across here. There we go. So anyway, he was on Charlie Kirk show recently too, and he had this to say. Check it out.
The FBI. Is it time to close it down completely? Is it time to relocate it out of D.C.? Okay, so you say abolish the FBI.
Yes.
Why?
That's right. So at the local level, you've got local prosecutors and you've got local police. You don't have an intermediary bureaucracy sitting in between. I'm making my way. My wife and I are both doing it. This book called G-Man. Everybody should read it. It's called For Government Man. It's about J. Edgar Hoover. It is something about the institutional nature of that institution, that bureaucracy itself, that is by design a formula for corruption. It shouldn't have existed in the first place because you don't need something sitting in between the DOJ, which has its own problems, and we could talk about that separately, and the U.S. Marshals, which sit over here, which are like the cops, the actual federal cops. When you put those tens of thousands of bureaucrats today still reporting into the J. Edgar Hoover building of the FBI, it is almost a formula for the creation of that form of corruption. So I think it's a false promise for anybody to say, oh, you're fired, the head of the FBI, and get the bad apples out. Using language that I hear from some of the other candidates that now want to check this box and feel good about checking that box. That's not going to get the job done. I couldn't get that job done because this is a beast that was created in the shadow of J. Edgar Hoover.
Yes.
That's doing exactly what it did to Martin Luther King. This isn't a left-wing issue. Blackmailed him to commit suicide, now going after Trump or anybody who had any affiliation with Trump. We have to shut the thing down. And there's good evidence, Charlie. I mean, we've gone through government shutdown periods where they threatened national security risk if they actually couldn't get paid or their employees were put on furlough. Nothing bad happened. To the contrary, I think we're actually going to have greater efficiency if the DEA has more accountability for its own drug cases rather than the FBI competing with it to take on those same cases. I don't think we need the ATF. The simple background checks that are done, fold that into the U.S. Marshals. So this is where when you have redundant federal agencies, you're asking for corruption, you get what you pay for. Absolutely shut it down. And is there going to be some broken glass along the way? Some frictional costs?
Hope so.
Yeah, there are. We'll be honest about that. But that's what it's going to take to restore 3 branches of government in this country, not 4. That's what the Constitution.
Yeah, that's right. And so there you have it. He wants to abolish the FBI. I agree. Now, I'm going to point this out. A lot of people say, well, but we need law enforcement. You can't just get rid of. Yes, you can. You're not decreasing the enforcement ability. What you're doing is you're abolishing an agency that is corrupt beyond repair. It cannot be fixed. It was designed to be corrupt. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Okay? Get rid of it. Vet all of the rest of the agents and personnel that are there, and then distribute them to other agencies that can perform the same function. There is so much redundancy in government, federal government particularly, and it creates massive amounts of waste. We don't need to be wasting all those resources, all those tax dollars, and creating a department that does nothing but, witch hunts nowadays, right? They do some good law enforcement acts, which is why you take their agents, well vetted, re-interviewed, new background checks, the works, redistribute them to other agencies. So we're not losing any capacity in law enforcement. So take that right out of your head. We're getting rid of an agency that is corrupt beyond repair. He wants to get rid of the ATF, the FBI, the Department of Education, a couple of others too. Here's one more thing he had to say, and then we'll move on. Check it out.
And so what I ask is, how are we actually going to end this conflict in a way that advances U.S. interests? And the thing that puzzles me, Tucker, is nobody in either party is talking about this right now. The Russia-China alliance is the single greatest threat that the U.S. actually faces today. And we are pushing Russia closer into China's arms by actually continuing to arm Ukraine. So what I've said is that I would negotiate a deal that ends the Ukraine war, frees the current lines of control. Yes, that means giving part of the Donbas region to Russia. I would make a hard commitment that NATO never admits Ukraine to NATO. And those seem like unspeakable words in the, certainly the Republican donor class. But we get something greater in return, which is that Putin, in that case, would have to exit his military partnership with China and remove nuclear weapons from Kaliningrad, which border Poland, and get the Russian military out of Cuba and Venezuela and the West. And this is a deal that Putin should do because he ends up winning. He gets things that he doesn't have today. But it secures American interests, too. And I do think, in a weird way, it does take an outsider to get that job done. Because if you want someone to fix a problem, you don't turn over the keys to somebody who actually broke the thing in the first place. If you want to fix it, maybe have somebody who didn't break it in the first place. And that's part of why I'm in this race as an outsider.
Okay. Well, since you're getting radical now.
Yeah. He wants to get out of Ukraine. And not only that, he has an idea, a plan to do it. He has a way to get out. It's not just going to happen, man. We can't stay there forever. As much as the ruling class would like that to be, so they can continue to feed the military-industrial complex and their own pocketbooks. We can't do that. We need to get out of Ukraine. Vivek has a plan. He wants to get rid of a lot of bureaucracies and federal waste, including eliminating entire agencies. That's great. Again, he's a Class A scholar. He's a successful entrepreneur. He's a patriot. He's a competitive sports person. He competed very highly in college. He's an accomplished pianist. I know I've said these before, but just to wrap it all up into one thing. He believes in free speech. He believes in parental rights. He believes in the nuclear family. He believes in capitalism. He thinks there's only two genders. He says reverse racism is racism. Look, all these things, people. He's not just saying them. Research him, okay? Hopefully, I've given you a little bit of a glimpse of who Vivek Ramaswamy is. Hopefully, I've given some of you doubters and some of you Trump-only people something to think about. Look, I still support Trump. You can too. But you can also educate yourself about other candidates at the same time. Because putting all your eggs in one basket, I don't know any part of life where that's been recommendable. Ever. So we can support Trump. We can honestly open our minds and educate ourselves about other candidates and the ideas that they have and make our decision from there. If you decide to still stick with Trump, great. I probably will too. In fact, I'm 99%. But that doesn't mean I don't want to look at the other people. I think Vivek's a good guy. I think he's sincere. I think he's honest. He's super intelligent. He's motivated. He's got ideas, and he knows how to put them into action. I like him. Now you got to decide. But hopefully I shed some light on it. All right, let's move on here. We've done enough. We took 3/4 of the show on one topic. I rarely do that. But I thought it was important to kind of dive into who this person was. And I hope that we've accomplished that, at least to some extent. So here's what's going on with the court.
I should have been looking into this
congressional
and what we have
corruption.
now seen, if you go